Big headache for President Obama with just a little more than 100 days to go before the general election. The United Nations could have for its member nations a new treaty on firearms presented by tomorrow. Critics in America say the thing could undermine Americans' constitutional right to bear arms. Kansas Senator Jerry Moran is one of more than 50 senators who say they would vote to block such a treaty if it is presented to them. Overall, Senator, what is the goal of this treaty? What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, that's hard to predict. You cannot envision any circumstance in which the United Nations is going to do something that improves the circumstances for Americans. At least as far as I can see, we're dealing with countries who have no similar guarantees that similar to what we have with the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. And so we have a group of nations who are coming together to negotiate something that hardly yet defined, but I certainly don't see much of a path in which we see something that would be positive to improve the safety, security, and the freedom of Americans.
So far, I guess part of the problem is that everything is coming out of draft language. There doesn't seem to be anything set in concrete yet. I know that you and a number of other senators have written the president a letter. Here's one of the points you make. You say, first of all, the treaty should explicitly recognize the legitimacy of hunting, sport shooting, and other lawful activities. Doesn't it do that?
It does not. There's a slight reference in the preamble to this draft that we've seen, and you're right. It's hard to take on the attack or to praise whatever might be happening there because everything is draft language, and now meetings are occurring with no outside observers. So it's hard to know what the exact language could be. My sources in New York tell me that the chances of getting an agreement are about 50-50. But if there is an agreement, almost totally likely to be something that is not advantageous to us and doesn't recognize the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. And what we outline in our letter, 51 senators, a broad group of folks, including 8 Democrats, are telling the Obama administration that in negotiating this treaty, we're not going to agree to anything that impedes upon the Second Amendment rights of U.S. citizens, but an agreement ought to include some basic things, and one of them ought to be recognizing the value of self-defense, the use of firearms for hunting and other recreational activities. And everything you see in the draft language is more about record keeping, is about transit of guns across one's country, things that would be very damaging to American rights and their liberties.
Oxfam is one of the organizations that has been pushing for this treaty. A spokesman for Oxfam said this: the treaty is only about the international transfer of civilian weapons. A transfer means when a weapon both crosses a national boundary and there's a change of title or control. U.S. gun rights do not involve weapons flowing from one border to another border. It's only about things domestically within the United States. The Second Amendment applies to the use of weapons within the United States. Essentially, they're saying gun owners in the U.S. don't worry.
We're reiterating that to the President of the United States, and with a clear message of enough senators who would be needed to ratify this treaty. 51 of us are saying we're not voting for a treaty if it does anything to impede the lawful rights of American citizens to under the Second Amendment for self-defense and the use of firearms. But the transfer across borders is something that presumably the treaty is designed to address. But the draft language talks about transfer of firearms and ammunition within the country and the need for record keeping to occur in order to monitor guns that may come in or leave your country. I just don't see how you get there without intruding upon the Second Amendment freedoms.
Very quickly, Senator, the UN and the U.S. government not powerful enough to control the weather. I know ranching and farming, huge industries in Kansas. What do you say to those folks back home who are so affected by this drought?
Well, you know, we're down on our knees every day asking in prayer, asking for rain and moisture. We're also looking up to the sky in hopes that that's the case. But this is a huge issue. We've had day after day in Kansas and across the Midwest of temperatures in excess of 100. Norton, Kansas this week hit a high, an all-time record of 118.
Wow. And
virtually no rain in most places in Kansas during that period of time. Estimated already $1.5 billion crop losses to date.
I know a lot of Americans are joining you in those prayers. Senator Moran from Kansas.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
More happening now. Coming up.